Hello, my name is Ian Elliott and I'm a Senior Lecturer in Public Leadership and Management at Northumbria University in Newcastle. I'm going to talk to you today about my experience as being an examiner of doctoral work, whether PhD or professional doctorates. And there's really four things that I want to discuss in this short video. The first one is around my motivations as an examiner. The second is about how I go about preparing for examining a thesis. The third is looking at how the viva works. And finally, of course, we have the final decision on the work and what happens next. I start any kind of marking process by willing the student to do well. I really want to see people doing well. That's why I got into academia in the first place, because I want to help people and I want to see people succeed. So I'm on your side. When I'm reading the work, what I'm thinking is, okay, so what aspects of this am I not sure about? Is there something here that has confused me in some way? Do I need a little bit more clarification on a particular point? And if I feel that way, then chances are other readers would as well. So how can I help the researcher to improve their work? How can I help the student to make this a better thesis? What aspects of the thesis could be clearer? Where could they strengthen their argument? How can we work together to make this better? And the third key thing I would say in terms of my motivation in examining doctoral work is that it's really important to remember that a doctoral research is very different to any other type of academic qualification. If you think about undergraduate studies or master's studies, at the end of that process, you get a certificate, you get an award, you get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. PhD or professional doctorate are very different. At the end of that process, yes, you do get a certificate and you do get a degree, but you become a doctor. And that's very different to other studies. So it actually is a reflection on you as a person, as well as on the work that you have conducted. And I think that's an important point. That is why we have vivas. Why, we don't generally, most students won't have a viva undergraduate study or a postgraduate study, but they will always do at doctoral level. Why do we have a viva? Well, we have a viva because the nature of the degree is very different, because there are those two aspects to it. On one hand, we are examining your work as a student, but on the other hand, we are making a judgment about you as a person, that you are qualified to be called a doctor. So I really look forward to the viva because it gives me that chance to meet the person who has written this work and to have an intellectual conversation with them about a subject that they have been researching for several years and which I am really interested in. How do I then go about reading the thesis? Obviously, these are large pieces of work, so it does take a long time to read through a doctoral thesis. The first thing I'll do is I will skim right through the whole thing in one go. And I do that primarily to get a sense of the general flow of the argument in the thesis and how each chapter links to the next, and get a sense of what the real focus, the theoretical focus of the research is, and hopefully a sense of what the key contribution of the research is from that quick skim through. That'll give me a general sense as to what the research is all about. But then after that, I will take each chapter separately and read through each chapter in some detail. And I won't do that all in one go, but I will treat each chapter separately, taking lots of notes as I read through things that maybe I'm not clear about, looking at the literature that's being used, looking for a sense of the balance between the real seminal works, the key authors, as well as looking at what research, what more contemporary or current research the student is drawing on. And I will take lots and lots of notes on each chapter as I'm going through that. So by the time that I've finished reading the thesis, now that'll be twice that I've read it, I'll have lots and lots of notes, and I'll be able to look over those notes and highlight key areas or key chapters where I want to perhaps focus the discussion on and have more questions perhaps than on others. It then comes to the Viva itself, and by the time I've got to the Viva, I'll have read the thesis a couple of times. I'll have made a list of questions, and I'll have, as with this thesis here, which I recently examined, I'll have lots and lots of post-it notes all over the written work to guide my questions. Typically, I start off by asking the student about their experience, about how they have come to do doctoral research, what interested them in the topic, and then move on to some more substantive questions. I'm looking at the questions from the last Viva that I prepared for, and the sort of things about why certain theoretical frameworks were selected, what was the rationale behind that, what it was around the methodology that made it particularly relevant for this type of research. Really trying to understand the motives for the decisions that have been made within the research. We always have to make choices when we're doing research about what type of methods to use or what type of theories to use, and it's of interest to me as to how those decisions have come about. What has the student done in order to arrive at the choices that they have made? It also helps in terms of thinking about the researcher's competence as a researcher. Have they selected methods that are appropriate, for example, for the type of research questions that they're asking? So those are the types of questions that I will ask. I'll also perhaps ask about what they would do differently if they were to do it again. I will perhaps ask about what they found more challenging within the research. There really isn't a right answer to any of these things. Again, you've got to bear in mind that by the time we come to the Viva, I'll have made a judgment on the quality of the thesis. And the Viva is an opportunity to enhance the quality of the thesis, to identify areas where it can be improved, but also to have that academic discussion with a fellow researcher about their last few years of work, about the challenges that they've faced, about the decisions that they've made, in order to get a sense of their approach to research, their ability to identify limitations. I guess another key thing in terms of the Viva, in terms of the type of questions I may ask, is also about having a sense that the student has learned through the process, and inevitably at the end of a PhD we will look back and we'll think, well, if I was to do it again I might do it differently. And that's okay. You know, it's okay to be honest about challenges that you faced as part of the process, things that you would do differently if you were to do it again. That all indicates that you have actually learned as part of the process, and that is a positive. So don't see discussing challenges or limitations as somehow a negative, because we all face those. We all face challenges in doing research. And really what I'm looking for is honesty and critical reflection on the process, and a degree of enhanced learning that has come about through conducting this research that will enable the researcher to produce even better work in the future. As an examiner, I'm looking to make sure that the work is as good as it can be, to have a conversation with the student about their work, to discuss the research that they've done, to discuss the learning that they have done, what they have achieved as part of that whole process. In making an assessment, of course, I'm looking at the thesis in the first instance. I'm looking at the quality of the written English. I'm thinking about how I have found the work as a reader. Is it clearly signposted throughout? Does it flow well? Is it clear what the key point is? Is it clear what is the key contribution? And does everything through the thesis, from beginning right through to end, build up to that final key contribution? So it's difficult to pinpoint one thing that makes for a good thesis. I would say that, again, with any piece of academic work, when we have to be prepared to be scrutinized by our peers. And so the PhD examining process is much more similar to having a peer review of a journal article, let's say. You can expect to receive some comments, some changes to make. And that is a key part of being an academic, is getting feedback from your peers, taking some time to think about that and reflect on it, and then making your work better. And inevitably your work will be better as a result of the peer review process. And examining a PhD is quite similar to that in a way. We're looking to improve the work, we're looking to assess the work as well. How do I assess performance in the Viva? I think really what I'm looking for in the Viva is an honest and reflective discussion. It's important not to be too defensive in the Viva, but to be honest about the shortcomings of your own work, to be honest about the things that you might do differently if you were to do it again, but also to highlight the strengths of the work and the contribution that you have made. Once you get to the submission process, you'll have been working with your supervisors to make sure that this is doctoral level study. So the Viva is the final assessment, but you will have been assessed and you will have been involved in peer review discussions throughout the whole journey. What I'm looking for at the end is to look at someone, to have a conversation with someone who I can see as being a peer, who I can see as being a potential future colleague. And do remember, my motivations for doing this as an examiner are that I want to help, I am interested in the research, and I want to learn about what you've done, and I'm really looking forward to having that conversation with you. So I hope that helps, and all the very best with the future of your studies. Thank you.